I'll give you a moment to change your pants. Moment over. Allow me to invite you to Gyossait from Amon 26, a mad, nightmarish, post-apocalyptic hell on Earth released on Newgrounds in Halloween 2011. Indie games on the indie gaming scene certainly doesn't have its shortage of great horror fare. There are games that actually do make you feel uneasy and genuinely scared to progress and go forward. This would be your Slenders, your Amnesia the Dark Descents, your Lone Survivors. There are games that are much more action-driven games with more of a horror theme. These would be games like House of Dead Ninjas or Bitejackers. But the third is the one I feel really distinguishes the indie titles from a lot more of the mainstream titles. Storytelling seems to be something they're allowed to take more risks on, sometimes revolving the gameplay simply around the story. Some really good examples of this are Home, Fibrillation, and even a small horror element in Dear Esther. Gyossait works because it manages to take all three of these elements and make them into a Jamba Juice of a great little horror gem. It has a frightening and engaging atmosphere, it has solid design with its action and platforming, and it's all centered on an original and engaging story. It's everything you could want in a horror game, and it's free. Let's find out what makes it tick. A few indie fans may already know Amon 26 with his reputation of creating several horror-based freeware games such as Mood, The Hunt, and All Our Friends Are Dead.
Go ahead, download it, give it a try, give it a little taste, get your tongue in there.
They're a bit crude, but they showed a lot of artistic promise, displaying a signature twisted art style and a creepy atmosphere. All Our Friends Are Dead could even be seen as a precursor to Gyossait. It's a very similar kind of game, it being a platformer where you shoot things and kind of a twisted Salvador Dali world. The game begins with a white godlike figure floating in space, heading towards a devastated planet, and then spits out a little white ghost onto the world. Well, same thing happened to me just last week. Floating space gods save money on gas. In the beginning, we're not quite sure who we are or why we're sent to this hellish place, so it's off to explore what happened while defending yourself against the horrors within. The biggest highlight of the game to me is the game's story. One of Amon's major goals was to ask the question, what would you sacrifice for love? Neglect, responsibility, fatherhood, death, these are all prevalent themes throughout the game. It's wrapped in mystery and symbolism throughout the levels, with words and dialogue written on the walls and through various events as you progress. It invites the player to piece together just what happened to these people and what the people are supposed to be and their role in the entire world. If you pay close attention to what's going on and who the enemies are, where they specifically are placed, you'll figure out the story on your own without having it explained to you in some kind of exposition. You learn the world's story by observing and being part of it. Since person A does this to you, or does this to these certain people, this is what person A is all about with person B in group A or group B. But more importantly, the game is about your central character and his mission to go to the devastated planet. It's about his morals, responsibilities, and confronting his past. It's one of those games that's very difficult to talk about without spoiling and giving everything away. Amon 26 has given a short plot explanation right on Newgrounds, but if you play through the game, I'm sure you'll pick up on exactly what's happening. You're not going to have this little gem spoiled by me. One thing I would like to say though is that it's a great way to write gameplay mechanics into telling a narrative with what happens in the world and building a character around yourself. The game does have a moral choice mechanic with both a good and a bad ending, but it does something really clever here. Depending on how you proceed throughout the game, the ending fight sequences are completely different from one another. The final boss fight is symbolic of your own moral choices that you made throughout the game. It's the kind of moral choice system that really adds to the story and to the experience instead of just being an excuse to play the game over again. You control everything in the game with the arrow keys. You move, you jump, you lower your shield in order to volley projectiles back at them, and later in the game you become an enraged version of yourself with a machine gun to mow down enemies in your way. It's always a good idea to have a simple controller set up for a browser game, with most players using only the keyboard. Unfortunately, the physics of the game, and specifically how you control the game with these physics, is the game's biggest flaw. Jumping can be a bit floaty, and every time you fall on a solid surface or a ceiling, the momentum stops as you're jumping, stopping the flow. Also, when you're floating, it's sometimes a case where you're tapping left and right, aiming perfectly, and this can lead to some frustrating bits, especially if you're trying to go for the good ending. The level design, however, is made to work with this control scheme in mind. It's not something that really requires tight controls like a Super Meat Boy or a Mario Brothers, but I can definitely see how gamers may be a bit frustrated going through the game. But I had the same reaction to this as I did with Dear Esther. The story, the atmosphere, the visuals, and the audio were all just so good I got completely immersed in it and didn't really care about the physics. Which is the perfect segue to talk about the magnificent art direction throughout the game. It's all oozing with creepy surrealism and imagination. The creator, Amon26, is somebody who's had chronic nightmares ever since he was a kid. He describes it as being an unwilling participant in a foreboding safari through a hell. But sometimes when he wakes up, he comes back with a few souvenirs and tries to make something interesting out of the whole ordeal. As a result, he doesn't really watch a whole lot of horror films very often. So a lot of his artistic direction comes from these horrible chronic nightmares. There's a lot of really unsettling imagery throughout the game, such as the red vines hanging off the platforms, the mouths all over the walls, the bloody statues, and the constant references to impalement. I think my favorite visual image is the dark background outside of the upside-down red pyramid. It fits the dark, surreal tone of the whole game, and it's just really neat to look at. The Theban alphabet is also a nice touch on both the title screen and later as you progress in the game. Perhaps on a very snobby and tangential level, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that Wiccan folklore and religion was part of the inspiration. Amon's earliest experience with the Theban alphabet was in a book where it was described as the alphabet of angels. I don't want to get too much into spoiler territory, but when the white figure comes down in the sky at the beginning, it may be more than a coincidence that the sun or the moon is in the background. The sound design also gets high marks. The music goes for a creepy tone with various noises and it's all mixed very well. You'll hear sounds of metal, wolves, screams, and unlike a lot of horror soundtracks, this one isn't predictable. One of the reasons I don't play as many horror games, or for that matter watch as many horror movies, is the idea of the jump scare. Like when it goes very silent for a long period of time and then out of nowhere a big sound or something comes at you and it startles you. It doesn't scare you, it startles you. While it does kind of have a jump scare early on in the game, it serves the story much better and it isn't there just to startle you. Gyossait also doesn't fall into the trap to hit the audience over the head with, "Oh my god, this is all scary and horrifying, look at all the blood and guts, ooh!" The sound design knows this world is a nightmare and displays great confidence and trust in the audience. Something I can definitely appreciate after going to several horror movies having to hold my ears through the experience. The sound effects are also very satisfying to use, such as using a machine gun to mow down enemies, or whipping out your shield to deflect attacks against the enemies. To get minorly technical, one of the most significant things about Gyossait is the fact that it was made using a program called Stencil. Very similar to the Game Maker program usually used by students, this allows users to create games without needing to code. To my understanding, Gyossait was made with some custom coding using Stencil, so there are customizable options, but to my knowledge, that's just what coding is here. Optional. Although this isn't a free program in order to publish games, some impressive work has been made out of it, including Trader from the creator of Alphaland. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but coding is probably one of the most challenging things about making your own game. There is a small group of people that look down upon programs such as Stencil and Game Maker where you don't have to program your own games because it's viewed as a lesser game because you don't have to go through this. Clearly, this is not a real video game if you can't use C++ in order to make it. To be completely honest, after playing Gyossait and a few other examples from the program, I honestly couldn't tell the difference between this and other Flash games such as Tower of Heaven, A Bobo's Big Adventure, or any other Flash game on Newgrounds. To me, the idea that these are lesser games because they don't have their own specific programming language is kind of ridiculous. Does not having C++ make Cactus's entire portfolio not fun? Does that stop Space Funeral from being a unique, quirky RPG from RPG Maker? Which, by the way, is probably a game I should talk about later. Does that stop people playing To the Moon being so emotionally attached to it? But anyway you spin it and whatever program was used, Gyossait is a wonderfully creepy horror game worth the time to play it. It's a game with an absolutely breathtaking artistic style, great audio direction, and it has a great, engaging story to tell. It may be a bit rough around the edges when it comes to its control, but it establishes Amon26 as a unique, visionary game designer. The game is still available for free right on Newgrounds.com. Get an extra pair of pants, shut off the lights, and grab some headphones. The madness awaits. Hey all, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed and know of a great indie game for me to try out, feel free to drop me an email. There's the email address right there. And also, Happy Halloween!